Happy Sunday, folks. Another update for us. This week, or this last week, one of the things I was working on was circling back on vacant property ordinances. One of the things I've been contacted about a lot since I got on the commission is properties that are vacant, essentially. Uh, some that aren't, but mostly the problem properties I hear about are vacant properties where the foreclosure process is in question. Who owns it is in question. In one case, it was a property that the owner passed away, and through a series of circumstances, it just kind of got lost in the legal fold of who owns the thing. But then we also have other properties. One came to mind that was owned by a bank. It was a foreclosure from years and years back, and it's got squatters on it. They're doing um, junkyard things, I'll call it, disassembling equipment. I do not know how some of these properties accumulate so many tires, but just generally destructive and problematic conduct on the property, and then the accumulation of garbage isn't healthy for anybody, including the people living there. And they can fall into this gray zone where the owner of the property has to file themselves as the aggrieved party. They have to file themselves as the victim of the crime for action to be taken. And for some of these larger institutions, they don't bother. It's an actuarial consideration for them. They're not in Coos County. They have no responsibility to the people of Coos County. It's banks somewhere on the East Coast, maybe. It's more or less forgotten they have the property and doesn't go through the administrative steps to do these things to take care of that property they came into possession of. One of the ways we address this, City of Coos Bay, I've talked about before, is through a vacant property ordinance. Now, Coos County has a vacant property registry and ordinance. And the owners are supposed to be taking care of different things relating to that property if they live outside of Coos County. And that's not happening a great deal, but something else you'll see large companies do is an actuarial game. Is it worth the money to address the problem, or is it easier to just see if any fines come, and if those fines come, well, pay them, and it's cheaper than actually solving the problem? One way to address that is to make things more strict. So if we've got what I'm proposing that's being reviewed now by council and county council, so not a city council, but a legal council, to allow the sheriff's office, law enforcement, to require additional criteria of those property owners. So within the city of Coos Bay, it was possible for the chief of police to require the property owners to abate crime on the property through additional security measures if needed. Addition of lights, addition of security. Some things escalating beyond that were options that could be required, which makes it more expensive for that bank to keep that property. And then, even while we were discussing it, it was before it was even one of our ordinances. These banks from the East Coast that had been holding on to properties since the Great Recession started offloading those properties. They started selling them so that local people could buy those houses and actually take care of the property in the community that they are a part of. Whereas for these banks, it was just an actuarial consideration. They didn't care, but we made some changes to where it was a little more burdensome for these out-of-area banks to retain the properties. So the actuaries shifted, they sold the properties, and local people were able to buy them up, or people that wanted to move here were able to buy them up. They went into the hands of people responsible to the community. So that's what I've got being reviewed right now by county council. I had months back kind of talked to the sheriff about it, and the idea of being able to require additional criteria of some of these properties would be good as well for abating crime on the properties. Obviously, if you're able to require greater security, then you can ensure there's less crime taking place on that property. My computer monitor's kicked off, so I turned blue for a minute. So we've got that. One of the just funny taking care of business things that comes up sometimes, we, as the commissioners, need to approve new plans. There will be changes to things. and we've got to sign off on them. One of the things this week was an updated map of the dunes. Hadn't been updated since 1975. And of course, technology is better today. Good to keep these things up to date. And if you didn't know this, dunes can migrate over time because of wind patterns. The part I found most interesting, though, as you think about this, someone mapped the dunes fairly precisely by the comparison we've got now. They did it without any satellites, computers, like they were just surveying a dune that moves on you. And they got pretty damn close. So that was just one of those funny things that comes up, you look at, and you kind of look at it sideways and think about it a while. I got news this week. I mentioned a few weeks ago now that there was a larger business looking at the area, something that's an industrial purpose unrelated to the port. Got news this week that they've entered into some exclusivity of doing research and market analysis on some property. So that was some good news to hear that we've got an industry looking at coming to the area. It was several dozen jobs if it comes in, good paying jobs, which is nice. And that ties into something that actually came up at the SCDC meeting this week. Was Ron, if you know him from West Coast Contractors, was back in DC, just tourism thing, and you never really stop working when you reach a certain point. Swung into the Contractors Association or something along those lines back there. People in DC knew about Coos Bay because of all the interest in us right now, because of the port, but also because of these other industries that have started to look. We've got investors that have spent a lot of money in our area over the last few years. That's a big thank you to Rob Crocker, who he came back to the region. He's a graduate of Reedsport, but nobody's perfect. And yeah, he brought a lot of attention to our area and brought in a lot of investment. I forget how many millions of dollars. I had it on one of my notepads, but he's brought in some major spenders. And Reedsport has seen housing developments like it never saw in decades. So it's been great to see. He plans to bring more people in later this year. So I've talked to him about the county assisting with that because it's been obviously highly successful as a cursory thing he did coming home. So we encourage some of those investors to look at our area. We present ourselves as ready to work with business, even if we don't have all the pieces. We need to be willing to work with people towards the future of the region. And that's what we'll present ourselves as, ideally. I got notification that we are approved for a grant, if we sign it, for some services worth about $7,000 to review different county buildings for energy efficiency opportunities. That'll open the door to other grants to implement battery storage systems, potential solar, different systems that make our buildings a little more energy efficient to reduce costs, and also a little more resilient to energy gaps, so that the county, you think about emergency services, you think about police a lot of the time, ambulance, fire, but how do they get anywhere? Well, we need a roads department. Roads is part of our emergency services at that point. We've got a lot of functions that require operation during an emergency. And with this grant, we'll see how we can be more cost effective while also developing more resilient infrastructure for when something happens, like the floods earlier this year. Or if it was something that had taken out the power supply, we would still be operable. So that was some good news as well. But one of the fun things of bureaucracy, you get a grant, $7,000. In the scale of government, that's very, very small. But it still comes with consideration, who's actually supposed to sign it? Does the whole board have to approve the $7,000 grant that we're really never going to touch for the most part? It's going to go from an Energy Trust of Oregon to a contractor, and that turns into a bunch of fun stuff. But it was good news to hear we get it. And then the last thing is actually this week, Region 4 from the Association of Counties. That's the other counties in Region 4 is Coos, Curry, Josephine, Jackson, and Douglas are going to hold their regional meeting here in Coos County for the first time. Region 4 has never met on the South Coast, despite two of the South Coast counties being in that region. So that'll be cool. I'm going to be talking about my proposal around income tax and distributing that, not just having the state not keep all of our income tax, but also distributing it to counties and cities of origin. I've been doing more research on that. I've been working with Department of Revenue, and getting the information on individual counties was easy. We can easily get the numbers on how much money was generated by a county as a whole, and I can get some of the cities. The challenge there is going to be getting the smaller cities, because when they sent me the report, I only saw cities of 10,000 people or larger, and that's only 2 of our 7 cities here in Coos County. So to make sure we can appropriately actuate revenue, I need those other numbers from the state. And then, of course, we'll need to parse out how much is being done by cities relative to what services counties have to provide that overlap with cities, or that cities don't have to provide because counties provide them, and really work into our actuarials from there. But right now, we're really close to having all the data we need to execute on it. We could do it another way and just go by total county and then kind of make some almost guesses. I don't like guesses, I like precision, but we could work it to have something that's reasonably equitable without the city data from the 241 cities in Oregon. What they sent me was only about 80 cities. But for now, we're going to see how close we can get before we start making compromises. So that's where that's at. That's the update for the week. I have been drinking my coffee, so I think I was a little quicker than usual. And everybody have a good week. Don't forget, tomorrow is a Labor Day. Some businesses aren't running. I have been reminded multiple times not to show up to the office, so I will try to remember that. And if you're tracking this, the special session around transportation is still going. Last I saw, the supplementary transportation bill had moved out of committee and it was going to the floor of the House. It's been a mess. Got problems, obviously. I was reading through it. I had signed up to testify, but I didn't end up being able to stay as long as it was going, and the meeting probably ended before my turn came up. But it has a good chunk of money related to just graffiti and trash cleanup in Portland, and I wanted to make the argument to them that that's not emergency funding items. They're talking about keeping roads open and critical infrastructure projects. Graffiti cleanup in Portland, I sympathize for my colleagues to the north, but that's not critical infrastructure. So that's my last thoughts on that, my last rant. Time to drink more coffee, and everybody have a good week.